Hello Brick Fanatics, here's a question for you. What if Star Wars games got legacy sequels like unto The Force Awakens? And what if those legacy sequel games got Lego sets of their own? There is a certain amount of wishful thinking in this video. First off, the wishful thinking that anything that was announced at the Game Awards last night for Star Wars will actually materialize into a proper game, but also the hope of a hope, the merest shred of the possibility of either of those games actually getting any Lego sets, because the Lego group has always been a little bit wishy-washy when it comes to adapting Lego Star Wars games into Lego form. In case you weren't paying attention, and frankly who could blame you, last night at the Game Awards, 2 new Star Wars games were announced. Galactic Racer, which is a sort of spiritual successor to Pod Racer from back in the day, and Fate of the Old Republic, which is meant to be a spiritual successor to Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, considered by many, including myself, to be among the best games made of all time, Star Wars or otherwise. Looking at these trailers, it is clear that we are doing a The Force Awakens, but for games. Because just as the original teaser for The Force Awakens starts with a big old Star Destroyer that has been crashed and smashed and broken up, we get incredibly similar shots here with a broken Star Destroyer in both of these cinematic trailers. In the Galactic Racer trailer, we've even got voiceover from a guy who's saying, "I want things to be the way that they were back in the noughties, back when I was a kid, back when I enjoyed Star Wars before Disney bought it." I mean, that's not what he's saying, but that's kind of what he's saying.
I want it back, the way it was before the Empire shut it down.
And then we've got Fate of the Old Republic, which is very clearly meant to be Knights of the Old Republic 3 in all but name. Here we have a smashed and crashed Interdictor class Starcruiser, which is the same kind as Leviathan from Knights of the Old Republic, the first game. And right at the end of the trailer, we get the name Casey Hudson, who was the director of the original Knights of the Old Republic and then went on to do Mass Effect and a bunch of other stuff that people are less fond of. So okay, we're getting some nostalgia-bait Star Wars video games sometime down the line, assuming that is that these actually ever release, because Lucasfilm Games, much like Lucasfilm, has a habit of announcing projects that never actually materialize. I will absolutely not be surprised if this is the final last thing we ever hear of Fate of the Old Republic, because that's kind of what happened with the Knights of the Old Republic remake that was supposed to be in the works as well. But okay, assuming that these games ever actually release, will the LEGO Group give us LEGO sets based on these games? The LEGO Group has been kind of patchy with video game LEGO sets. Way back in the day we got The Force Unleashed, and then we had an entire wave of sets for The Old Republic, the multiplayer online role-playing game which was meant to be a successor to Knights of the Old Republic back in that day, and is still going to this day incredibly, although the LEGO sets have long dried up by this point. But then more recent games like, for example, Jedi Survivor, we get the occasional little tease. We get, for example, a BD-1 LEGO set, all nice and brick-built. We get a Cal Kestis minifigure but thrown into a completely unrelated LEGO set, and that is kind of it. There's been nothing really else on the LEGO game side of things for a while. I mean, I guess maybe you could say that 501st Battle Pack is kind of Star Wars Battlefront inspired, but that's kind of tenuous because 501st Clone Troopers have also turned up in other places like, for example, the Clone Wars or Revenge of the Sith. Now, earlier this year at Fan Media Days, I had the opportunity to sit down with 3 of the designers of some of the upcoming January 1st LEGO Star Wars sets, and we had an interview and we talked about a bunch of different things. Right at the end of the interview, the very last thing I asked them, just as we were wrapping up, was a question about Darth Malak, the Knights of the Old Republic character, and why he got chosen to be just randomly thrown into an R2-D2 LEGO set last year.
The anniversary characters were picked. Basically, we had an opportunity that year to include these bonus figures in a lot of the models, and we tried to make figures that we thought would be difficult to fit in another context, but that were highly desirable. So Darth Malak, extremely iconic, extremely beloved, but Knights of the Old Republic isn't exactly in the zeitgeist right now, so there aren't really opportunities to make a Darth Malak figure, except in this rare case where we could.
We'll have the full interview available a little later down the line, so this is your opportunity to subscribe so that you don't miss that when it comes out. But in the meantime, just focusing on this question, it's clear that the LEGO designers are aware of the love for the wider canon and non-canon of Star Wars stories from across various different media, and would love to give us more stuff, but they are a little bit beholden to the zeitgeist and what fans are focusing on, and presumably what Lucasfilm is doing across various different media. It's possible, although this has only ever really been wishful thinking on the part of the fan community, that maybe if that Knights of the Old Republic remake had ever actually released, supposedly they're still working on it, maybe we don't know, maybe we might have also got some Knights of the Old Republic Lego sets because that was in the zeitgeist. And perhaps, if Fate of the Old Republic ever actually releases, we might get something similar here. We might get Lego sets based on that game in the same way that we got Lego sets based on the Old Republic when that first launched. However, I get the sense that there's kind of a hierarchy to that Star Wars zeitgeist, and games never really rank as highly as things like Disney Plus shows or as movies. So for example, in 2026 we're getting The Mandalorian and Grogu, a film which caps off all of the Disney Plus stuff for The Mandalorian, which has clearly been very, very profitable for the LEGO group as we've got so many Mandalorian sets over the past few years, and wouldn't you know it, we're getting a bunch of Mandalorian sets on the 1st of January. While we're on the subject, something else from that interview. I find this absolutely fascinating. I asked why we get more LEGO sets based on Star Wars films rather than on Disney Plus shows. And while the LEGO designers apparently are not the ones who are making all of those decisions, that's fair enough, they did say that one of the big challenges for making sets based on Disney Plus shows is that Disney Plus shows have a very short window of production as opposed to a film which is in production for a much longer time, and as such it is more difficult to make LEGO sets that tie into Disney Plus shows because they get made so quickly. There's not really enough time for the LEGO designers to respond to all of the stuff that Lucasfilm is doing.
With a movie year, oftentimes these movies are meant for mass audiences. They are kind of a movie for everyone, whereas with the shows, there's more flexibility to make shows for more specific audiences. So Skeleton Crew is kind of more focused at kids, Andor is more focused at adults. And in the portfolio of LEGO sets that we make every year, we're trying to make different sets for different groups of people, and in a movie year, it's easier to just make a lot because the movie's for everyone, whereas the TV show's kind of a bit more targeted.
That's what I meant a bit of the zeitgeist thing before, but I couldn't really articulate. That's what I meant, like it's...
I think also for a movie, it's also longer in production, so there's maybe more time to determine what are we going to do.
That's a good point, because we have to get the reference materials, a year and a half, 2 years in advance.
But
to make
ultimately,
a Lego set.
It is a cooperation between the Lego Group and Lucas Disney Films. Like, what are we focusing on?
Because Lucasfilm might have their own priorities that we want to focus on.
And that being the case when it comes to LEGO Star Wars sets, a lot of the times the designers are going to be beholden to what Lucasfilm wants to share with them and how much Lucasfilm can share with them. So if there is something that is in production but is going to have a very quick turnaround, there's going to be less opportunity for the LEGO designers to react to that immediately as that Disney Plus show comes out. And then once a Disney Plus show is out, it is the big hot new thing for like 5 minutes before the next Disney Plus show comes. So I think to a certain degree, because of the speed with which Disney Plus requires more and more and more content, I don't feel like there's always necessarily time for the LEGO designers to react to that before a thing falls out of the zeitgeist. Zeitgeist very quickly becoming the word for this video. Now, alas and alack, video games tend to stay in the zeitgeist for even less time than Disney Plus shows because you've got so many more development studios that are making these things. So you'll get a really big release and everybody will go, ooh, and ah, and oh, that's fun. And then it'll be entirely swept aside for the next big thing that releases the week after. If you look at the video game IP partners that the LEGO Group is working with at the moment, you have the big mainstay Evergreen kinds of things that just don't go away. Your Super Mario, your Minecraft, your Sonic the Hedgehog, Horizon to a certain degree as well. These are things which just kind of stay in the ether. They're not necessarily always the biggest of the big thing, but you know that there's going to be another Mario game. You know that there's going to be another Sonic the Hedgehog game. You know that Minecraft is not going to suddenly disappear. You don't get, for example, LEGO sets based on Silk Song, which is a game which was in development for a very, very long time and was everywhere for a moment and is still everywhere at the moment, I think. But certainly it's not quite as culturally ubiquitous as something that has been around for 30 plus years at this point. Ditto Pac-Man, ditto Atari, ditto Fortnite to a certain degree, ditto because we're getting Pokemon next year. Basically, the LEGO Group has so many different games partners that they could work with, they're only picking the really big ones. And while Star Wars has a video game history that spans decades and decades at this point, there are not very many video game Star Wars characters that have shown up over and over and over again over all of that time, because you'll normally get brand new characters characters, brand new settings, things that therefore are maybe not quite as iconic or recognizable to fans outside of the certain bubble of time during which those games released. With one exception, that is. There is one Star Wars character who debuted in a video game and has shown up time and time and time again over decades at this point, and has even appeared in Rebuild the Galaxy, the Star Wars Disney Plus show, in minifigure form. That character is Kyle Katarn, star of the Dark Forces video games, star of the Jedi Knight video games. Maybe if we were to get a new LEGO Star Wars video game set, we should have a Kyle Katarn one. I'm just throwing that out there. I'm not saying that it's going to happen. I'm just saying maybe, LEGO designers, if you are watching this video and you need an idea for a character to put into another random LEGO set, you just need that minifigure, someone who is going to stand out to a lot of people, we could get a Kyle Katarn. He's not maybe necessarily the most exciting possible choice, but he is a logical one. That's all I'm going to say. Anyway, what are your thoughts on FOTOR, Galactic Racer, and LEGO sets based on legacy Star Wars video game sequels? Let us know in the comments down below, and do all of the rest of the YouTube things. You know the drill by now. Give us a thumbs up, hit subscribe, and the notification bell. If you're going to be making any LEGO.com purchases in the near future, there is an affiliate link in the description. There is a QR code currently on screen. They take you straight to the LEGO website, and we get a percentage of the sale when you purchase through those links. Doesn't cost you a penny extra, but it helps to keep the lights on at Brick Fanatics. Speaking of which, you can go to brickfanatics.com for coverage of all things LEGO, and you can sign up to our newsletter so that you never miss anything LEGO related ever again. Thank you very much for watching, and may the Force be with you.